How's it going, everyone? My name is Michael Thurville, sociologist and photojournalist here at VEDACom. That is VEDACom.com, VEDA World News. Make sure you guys check out the website and the link that's going to be inserted after this video. I'm sitting here with
Amanda Edwards, your former at-large Houston City Council member, now running to be U.S. Congresswoman for the 18th Congressional District.
Let's start off by asking you this. What made you want to do it?
You know, public service to me is very serious. And for me, it's not just about having a name placard or some access to power or something political to hold on to. It's really about people and making a difference in their lives. And when I was growing up, my father got sick with something when I was about 10 years old called multiple myeloma.
Really?
Which is a very aggressive form of cancer that ended up taking his life when I was a teenager. But when he was experiencing all of that, I witnessed it. And I remember asking my dad questions like, what happens if this insurance stuff that I was learning about, what if they say no to the life-saving treatments that my dad needed?
Okay.
And my dad would just respond and say, well, we just have to figure something else out. And I knew then, just like I know today, that actually wasn't the right answer, and that the right answer should have been that we have systems that actually work for people, systems that actually save lives as opposed to harm them. And so at an early age, I really began to appreciate that lives are really lying in a balance of the decisions we make, the policies we make, or the systems we create. And we've got to have vigilant leaders who are going to really appreciate that as we navigate through the politics so that we can get the results that our communities deserve.
Okay, great. So that is a great starting point. I noticed that here when I looked at your resume. We're talking transportation, technology, infrastructure. You on a committee, by the way. Economic Development Community, Vice Chair, Budget, Fiscal Affairs Committee, HGAC, which we will talk about very briefly here. Of course, running for the Congressional District 18, the nonprofit Be the Solution. Is that still around?
Yes, it is.
Okay, no problem. Houston chapter of the Links. Now, a lot of people may not have heard of that, and we'll be touching on that as well. And Alpha sorority. We like them.
Yeah.
Very much so. And you're Catholic. Okay.
All of those things are true.
Okay. Let's kick it off with transportation.
Yes.
How is Houston going to expand the rail system, or are they going to do it at all?
You know, that's not currently what's in store in terms of, seeing the type of expansion that is needed. I believe that we need to invest in multimodal transit options where you have not only rail incorporated into that, but it needs to be grade separated as well. So
what do you mean by that?
So, right now our system of rail is on the street level. You drive up, you're parked or you're sitting next to the train when you're driving your car. In a lot of different markets, you don't see that. You see a situation in which it's either underground or it's above the street level. And so you'll see elevated rail or rail that's underneath the ground. And that is what I propose, is to have elevated rail where we need to create real multimodal transit options. If there's a car accident, we're at the same intersection, it does you no good to be on the train or in the car, right? We've got to have some alternative transit options. And what I have found is that we have quite a bit of people that should be or anticipated coming into our 8-county region in the next 20 years. Be like close to 4 million people. And in that process, can you imagine adding that number of people, and we have the existing infrastructure for streets and freeways that we have as the sole means for people to get to and from their workplace, their centers of education, entertainment. We need to expand.
What's holding it up? What's holding the progress for that?
Politics is part of the problem, right? So part of it is that transportation projects usually are long-term in nature.
This is true.
So by the time there is a ribbon cutting for something you may have spent all your political capital on, you might be long gone from political office. You might be term limited. And so what ends up happening is that you see elected officials pick up and focus on shorter term ideas and shorter term projects so that they can be connected to.
Is it fair to say that these are
fruition.
Politicians being short-sighted for their own political gain?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's obvious obviously you want to have a mix. You don't want all your projects that you focus on to be long term and nothing to ever come to fruition, because obviously you need to demonstrate your ability to be effective, right?
Correct.
So you have to have a balance.
Okay, diversification is key.
Yeah, and part of that is and it does cost political capital. There are a lot of people who don't want to see investment in transportation.
Like who?
Many people are detractors here in Houston. We've been trying to get multimodal transit options in our city since the monorail proposals in the 80s. This is a long-standing 40-plus year battle that has been ongoing. We have had one congressman, which Congresswoman Lizzie Panel Fletcher replaced, but at one point they were blocking funding to the city of Houston for rail that had already been approved by the voters. Now, when
you say they, who
I'm the congressional delegation. So,
really?
Yeah. So we.
Why?
Because it wasn't politically popular on the conservative side. And so there are a lot of people who think that public transportation is simply waste. And as a result of that belief, really push against it.
In a city like Houston, which is almost 700 square miles.
650 square miles.
We're looking at a lot of commerce. People being able to come from Katy to go to work, from the west side, north side, east side, south side of Houston, to come downtown, to go to different places, shopping malls, the Galleria District, all of these different places. Why does it seem like they're cutting off their own hands economically?
I don't know why that belief is so pervasive, but it's not new to Houston. It's not unique to Houston. Generally speaking, it's a conservative viewpoint that public transportation of that sort or of that variety is public waste. That's a commonly held view. I don't agree with that view, but it's a commonly held view. I think we've got to invest in our infrastructure so that we can get people to and from where they need to go. We need to, in order to be competitive as a city, demonstrate that we have a cohesive transportation system that does effectively bring people to and from where they need to go, for those that are dependent on it for work and otherwise, but then also people who want to use it as an option. They should be able to do that as well. And cities like Atlanta have gotten it right. They have the multimodal transit options. There are people who use it every day, and there are people who don't use it every day but want the option to use it when there's a sporting game or an Olympics or something of that nature.
And FIFA is coming. The World Cup is coming to Houston next year.
Correct.
So we have an influx of people, which I was told we do not have enough adequate housing for.
Yeah, I'm sure that is the case. And so we've got to get ready to compete. These are major economic pluses to your city when you're ready to compete for them, and you're ready for those to absorb, you have to absorb those folks coming into your community, but you've got to be ready to effectively and efficiently transport them and effectively and efficiently house them and do those things in order to be ready for that type of big stage.
Understood. Moving on to technology. We want to say congratulations for the work you did for the ION building downtown.
Thank you.
So congratulations for that. But what is coming to Houston as far as technology? What do you see?
So when I first started this work years ago, when I first got on city council, it was 2016, my first year on council, and I learned that Houston was ranked number 42 in venture capital in the nation. And I said, 42? Surely that can be improved. And so how could we, as the fourth largest city with this booming economy, be 42 in venture capital? And for those that are not quite as familiar, venture capital is critical for startups, tech startups.
Yes, it is.
And so we were ranked 42, and I asked quite a few people, what is it that we need to do to fix it? Couldn't get a clear answer. So I decided, as the vice chair of the Budget and Fiscal Affairs Committee, to create a budget amendment in which we created a task force for technology and innovation in our city, so we could explore what could be done here in Houston to create a real, robust innovation economy. And so we went all over the country looking at various innovation economies and came up with our own strategies and recommendations. We worked in tandem with the Greater Houston Partnerships Roundtable as well. So we all put our heads together working on this effort. And some of the strategies included things like creating an innovation district where the ION was, of course, built. That was one example. We went from $260 million in venture capital investment when that work first got started to over $2 billion in less than 5 years.
And it's a fantastic building. I just finished shooting a couple of programs there this week. Fantastic place.
And we're really grateful to Rice for raising their hand and stepping up and being the leader on leading for, making that project become a reality. Because lots of ideas, right? But you've got to be able to take those ideas and convert them into reality.
Well, let me ask you, in step with technology, film and movies and blockbuster hits, film studios, they want to come to Houston. However, we do not have the incentives to compete with places like New Orleans or Louisiana or even LA itself or New York.
Mm-hmm.
What can we do to attract more big name studios to come here to Houston and Texas in general?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that competition comes on what the state laws are. So we have to, from a state level, also get committed to the entertainment industry being a real presence that we want to compete for. So some of the state law changes need to come into place. You also have local abatements that can be offered, and economic development incentives that you can offer to try to incentivize groups to come in. But it's work with the different levels of government need to work in tandem with each other.
Does Houston have anything in process now or standing?
It's not been where it should and can be, and I think there's a need for more of a concerted effort and concentration on getting that done.
Okay. Going on to economic development committees. Your thoughts of what's happening today? What do you see going on tomorrow?
In terms of economic development in our community?
Yes.
Well, right now the city, there's some challenges within the city, and there's challenges happening nationally, right? We've got a president who has really destabilized our working families, just from top to bottom, all of our community members by invoking these tariffs and creating such disruption in our marketplaces. You've got seniors who are afraid of what's going to happen to them because they've got Social Security in limbo with that running out. So there's lots of angst around the economy. I think from an economic development perspective, one of the things that could be utilized as a tool here in Houston are things like our CDBG dollars that can be used for economic development purposes as well. So you can use them for housing. You can also use them to create more economic opportunities in neighborhoods and communities. And so right now we've got a housing crisis in Houston.
We do.
And as a result of that, we have just not used those and leveraged those CDBG dollars.
Why do you think we're not doing it as effectively as we should?
It's about leadership. It's leadership. It's having a vision for it. You got to know what you're striving to achieve, not just maintain the status quo.
Okay.
And I think we have a need in our city to really build and reduce the gap that we have in affordable housing. That's our crisis right now. We have a huge gap and big disparities of what Houstonians believe is what is affordable and what's available as far as affordable housing stock. And so we've got to put money into that, but more importantly, you got to put a plan together. The city of Houston, it's 650 square miles. It's the fourth largest city in the nation, yet we have no comprehensive plan for housing in our city.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's just something that has continued to persist, and the public hasn't demanded differently because they've not seen it be different. So if you've never gotten used to something else, you've never seen a time where we had our act together when it came to housing, then you're not going to say, well, I demand that it be this way again, because you haven't seen it operate effectively or efficiently. And so we've never, this crisis is new, but we've also never have had a clear vision on what housing should look like in our city. We've been very laissez-faire, very piecemeal. When those grants get offered up, it's on a case-by-case basis. What I would suggest as a solution to this, because we just are so disjointed with our approach, is to require cities like ours, if you want to get these CDBG dollars that provide dollars for housing, provide dollars for economic development, then you need to demonstrate or show us how you're planning to reduce disparities with regard to affordable housing.
Do you feel as if the Whitmire administration is doing such?
Well, that is not the current standard. So
what is the standard?
The standard is there is no standard attached. So we don't have to show a plan for a reduction in affordable housing in order to access CDBG dollars from the federal government.
Okay.
What I'm saying to you, once I get into the federal government, is to push on the feds to add that to the criteria, because I do think that cities like ours should be planning and really getting serious about creating more affordable housing for our community.
Okay.
And so that's right now not the requirement. So we haven't been outside of the requirements. It's just we need more requirements in terms of just getting our city to focus on how do we reduce these disparities that we have when it comes to accessing affordable housing for folks.
Okay. HGAC, they work hand in hand with Workforce Solutions. We're talking employment now.
Okay.
Employment numbers. What's happening where people are getting laid off in droves here in Houston? I'm seeing it every other week where you got 100 employees getting laid off, another couple thousand getting laid off, or the people are severely, who went to college, right, are underemployed. They're finding themselves not making enough money. A lot of people are finding jobs that typically they really don't want to work. Being a former recruiter with Workforce Solutions, I see in the system employers still paying $7.25.
$7.25.
Seriously.
Wow.
And the numbers at the time, and we're looking at as early as January of this year, and my good friend of mine is still there, the employment numbers for the time that they find people jobs are at 36%.
Wow.
What do you suggest that HGAC can do to boost the employment numbers?
So to clarify, so my involvement with HGAC was when I was serving as a member of their what's called the Transportation Policy Council. So I wasn't on the HGAC board. I was on HGAC's Transportation
and thank
Policy
you for that
Council.
clarification.
Yeah. So we have an 8-county region that has got what's called an MPO, which is a Metropolitan Planning Organization for transportation that gets to help make decisions about the transportation projects that get funded by the federal government.
Okay.
And so each region has its own. Ours happen to be housed under the guise of HGAC, but some places, I mean, it's independent, and so ours, it's confusing, so I wanted to clarify.
No,
so
and
I was
I
not an
appreciate
HGAC board member, I was an HGAC TPC board
Understood.
member.
So we're talking transportation.
Transportation.
Okay,
yes.
what do you
But
see coming?
yes, but with regard to your question about jobs, I just want to make sure it was clear that I'm was not on the HGAC board. But with regard to your question about jobs, we've got to create more. I mean, we are in an environment where job creation is going to be central. Look at ways in which we can help serve our community at the very same time as employ people. Things like investment in our infrastructure. Right now, we don't have enough investment in our infrastructure. We're in the middle of hurricane season. Mm-hmm. And so we need to be making a lot of investment in infrastructure, which creates a lot of good paying jobs.
And it does.
And so that's one of the key ways that you can start to help stimulate your economy. You remember the stimulus when that passed, all that?
Yes, I do.
And all the jobs that got created. You provide those resources so that you can be a job creator. And so that's one example. Housing is another. I mean, the things that I talked about as gaps and issues of areas of growth and improvement that we need to do or embark upon are also areas where we can have job expansion. And so when you focus on things like construction industry or things like infrastructure investment and those sorts of types of investments, that's going to create a whole lot of jobs. And so we've got to continue to do that. Separate from that, on the transportation question you asked, we've got 4 million people coming into our 8-county region. We've got to be making the investments now in our infrastructure, and we have really been in a community where we've focused only or pretty significantly on highway investment versus having the opportunity to expand in broader ways in terms of multimodal transit options like trains and bikes and other sorts of transit options for people to be able to get to and from where they need to go.
If you had a magic wand, now we gotta ask this question. If you had a magic wand right now and you can change something for the betterment of the community and Houstonians, what would it be?
Oh, so many things.
Well, name them.
All of them. Well, first of all, I'd fix our infrastructure so we stop flooding. Okay, so that's first and foremost. Keep Houstonians safe. I often say We cannot stop it from raining, but we can be prepared to catch it when it does.
Because I remember reading an article, and they stated that Houstonians are tired of being strong.
Yes.
Where they're thinking about, hey man, there's got to be a city that's better than this. I'm tired of getting flooded. I'm tired of just having to fix things every single time a hurricane comes around. What would you say to those people?
I mean, that's what if I could just fix it, that would absolutely make that a priority.
Okay.
Because it's such a pervasive problem. When Harvey struck our city, I was serving as the at-large council member in an at-large position 4 at the time, and I'll never forget when that 51 inches of rainfall finally hit our city, and the devastation that ensued. And I never forget some of the conversations. I remember talking to some of our seniors, and I'd ask them, what are you doing to clean up the house? And they'd tell me what they were using, and said, well, what about the furniture? Are you going to get that out of the house too? What is the plan for that? My grandson is coming to pick that up. Okay. All right. And then I'd ask them, well, what about the walls? Because those walls had been soiled by flood water. What are you doing about the walls? And they'd look at me and say, well, they're already dry. And I'd look at them like you just looked at me and say, oh no, but you can't let them stay in the house. They've been soiled by flood water. It's going to be mold,
Yeah.
And so house after house after house that I would visit, they'd say the same thing to me. So I learned that on the ground, something bad was happening. And that was we were not getting our seniors connected to the help that they needed. So we developed a door-to-door canvassing program where we went and mobilized hundreds of volunteers going door to door, went to hundreds of homes, checking on some of our most vulnerable seniors to make sure that they were getting the help that they needed. And the sad part of all of that, which brings me back to my run for Congress, is when I would step foot on those doorsteps, the first question they'd always ask me was, what are you doing here? And I'd say, I'm your city council member. I'm here to help. And I had my city council gear on. And they'd then ask me, very puzzled, and they'd say, but wait a minute, are you up for re-election already? And the fact that we've conditioned our community to expect and believe that the only time they have value to us is when it's time for us to ask them for a vote, as opposed to us actually showing up to do our jobs. It didn't occur to them that even though this was the second worst disaster in U.S. history, that I could possibly just be there to do my job, because that's not what we've conditioned or shown them that we do. We show up when it's campaign season. We know how to find you when it's time to vote. Mm-hmm. We know what coffee you drink when you vote. Okay, we don't know that, but we know all the things.
You'd be very surprised by the demographics.
Right,
yes.
We know everything. And then we just get amnesia when it's time to deliver on the things that we talked about on these campaign trails. And that paradigm of over-promising and under-delivering, or not showing up for people, or, I hear people often say, nothing ever changes here, and they get disconnected.
Is that a true statement?
In some cases, right? And that shouldn't be a true statement. And so we've got to work to put people in the office that are going to restore the confidence that something does happen here and change is possible here. And the reason I know it is because I've seen it. And be able to inspire people to want to participate again. That's another one of our big challenges is voter apathy. They say voter apathy action, I don't like that term, but just I would say a voter disconnection, because people don't just become apathetic for no reason.
This is true.
If people disconnect, and there are a variety of reasons why, and it's our job to figure them out and to get them to re-engage. And so that's what my campaign for the 18th Congressional District is about, is to really be the change that people want to see. I have the track record, I have the experience, I've done the work. I can point to examples. We talked about some of them in our conversation today. And we need somebody that can invoke that confidence, that optimism, that change is possible for their community. And it's not just about dealing with the challenge of the president. We've got to deal with that. But we also need to be seizing the opportunities that we otherwise could miss, because we've got to have somebody in that's got a bold vision for our future. That's what leadership is about, is being able to realize that vision and make change happen. So, if I had a magic wand, I'd fix infrastructure first. I would then get people to, start getting back into the fold, start making the changes that are needed in our community when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to economic stability, when it comes to education. And then finally, I would also make sure we have a transit system that works for everybody, both those that need to take it day to day to go to work and to go home and do those sorts of things, but also the people who want to take it as an option. Make it work for everyone. So a multimodal transit option in a city that doesn't flood. The people are goals, so I would never change that.
Okay.
But I maybe every once in a while might cool it down just a little bit.
Okay.
I might pull that lever just a little
Okay.
bit. But the food is amazing, the people are a joy, and our spirit is just incomparable. So
that is a great set of answers. What I like about it is you were able to articulate not only your position but make it make sense. Because a lot of people that get up here and they'll say something, and it's just like, yeah, they said something, but they didn't really talk about why.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Here at VEDA World News, we don't take political sides.
Understood.
But the one question that I do have for you is, why should people vote for you?
Absolutely. I am the candidate in this very crowded race.
Okay.
Actually leading the field right now. We're ahead in the polls. But I'm the candidate in this race that actually has the vision and the experience and skills necessary to not just address the challenges that lie ahead when we're talking about the fight that's needed in Washington. We're going to need somebody who can fight as it relates to access to healthcare, education, economic stability, and the like. But we also need someone who has a bold vision and knows how to execute on that, knows where the policy gaps are. One of the things that you do as a congressional member, you write legislation, you co-sponsor legislation, you put in amendments, so you do that work. But then you also have the responsibility of what they call bringing home the bacon. That's resources to your district. And in that regard, I have a background in public finance in terms of bringing public dollars to public projects. I did public finance law for quite a number of years before getting into public service, and having that background is useful in terms of somebody being ready on day one. So I would say out of this field, I'm the candidate that's equipped and ready day one to realize a bold future for our community, but then also to be responsive to the challenges that lie ahead. And we've got to, as I call it, walk and chew gum. You've got to deal with the challenges, but you also have to look up so you can seize those opportunities.
Your thoughts on the Democrats who broke decorum?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, as we have been in this seat, in this district, the 18th Congressional District, if you count the time where Congresswoman Sheila Dashley passed away and got sick and passed away, and combine that with when Congressman Turner passed away, the delay in the special election, the fact they're going to have a special election runoff, we're talking about 18 months with no representation for the 18th Congressional District. And as a result of that, it's really problematic because what has happened, there's an adage that goes like this: if you're not at the table, you're what's on the menu.
This is true.
And I have never seen a clearer example of that than what's happening right now to the 18th. We have no voting member, so they have put us on the chopping block, sliced and diced us, and in fact did this in such a horrible way. I've got members of the community asking with their eyes as wide as saucers, what can I do? And I have to tell them what limited options we really have at this stage in the game, because they're rigging the game right now. They're changing the rules. They're moving the goalposts as we speak with this redistricting. I have gone to Austin 3 times, testified there twice, testified here in Houston on the record as well, and also held press conferences, town halls, phone banks, you name it, we've done it as it relates to mobilizing people to fight back against this redistricting. There's a simple phrase: right is right and wrong is wrong. And this is wrong. And
Why is it wrong?
It is tearing our communities apart. It is, in addition to ripping our communities apart, it is also suppressing Black and brown votes and voters and voices in our community. It is also having the effect of politically rigging the system in the game. And all of these things are against our institutions, it's against our practice, and it's against the law. And what we're doing is prohibited, and it's happening. And they're doing it in a way where they allow people to testify. Testify to what? When no maps were made available, what were they testifying about? And so they did not release those maps until 48 hours before the redistricting committee voted. came together to vote. They voted on it, and they were going to pass that in less than a week after the map had been released. Didn't give representatives or anybody a chance to really engage properly. That's not discourse. That's not civil discourse. That's not the way you run a government. It's to shove, redistricting down everyone's throat without an appropriate process. And that's what was being done. So to flee the state, to break the quorum so that we would have the opportunity to have a voice, have a response, have adequate, ability to fight back, they absolutely made the right decision.
Okay.
I think that was absolutely the correct way. And unfortunately, the governor has chosen to continue to play politics with the situation by putting redistricting ahead of other items. They're trying to force them to come back for those reasons. And so that redistricting, if you're going to put something on the ballot, on the agenda, it should be last. And do the other business of the state. Go help the folks that were in the Guadalupe River flooding. Don't try to pin it on the legislators who left. And they were very well aware of the sequence of the agenda and why they wanted that sequence. It's political, and in terms of trying to force their hands to not break quorum. And it's the wrong thing to do. And we have got to get out of the business of allowing people and to be pawns in political games. We have got to stop it. We are in a very toxic state of our politics right now.
And we are. And since this is a federal seat and you will be dealing with federal matters, let's briefly, and I do mean briefly, the Israeli lobby. Would you be controlled by the Israeli lobby?
Right now, there's a lot of concern about what's happening in the Middle East with this crisis. We have a humanitarian crisis without question. People who are losing their lives, and we've got to make sure that we are working to call this to an end. And so we know that this relationship has been complicated with regard to the allyship that America has with regard to Israel, but also what's happening with regard to the loss of life. And we've got to really focus on how do we end it and how do we stop it now. We saw that with the whole, the issue regarding the Middle East just recently, that the U.S. was also getting involved in that as well. We have got to, from our involvement standpoint, really be crisp and clear about trying to prevent the loss of life that is incurring. And so I think you can have relationships but still really have a high regard to human life and be proactive about that. And I think that's where we need to head.
Okay. And